So here I can, how can I share my screen? Where is the option? Hello? Also, how will I share my screen?
Good.
That is actually it's a Google Meet. No, it's
You
on
you
present
click
now.
on the present now. You
Yeah,
click to the
I
present
went
now.
there. Then in present now, a window, a tab, and entire screen is there.
Yeah, entire screen. Do the entire screen.
So entire screen.
Then you minimize the this screen.
Okay, okay,
You open to the PowerPoint presentation.
okay. So without sharing, it will be there.
You have already shared, but you have to click on share.
Okay. Share is not highlighted. Cancel is highlighted.
You have to click on that part.
Yeah, I'm clicking, but it's not highlighted. It's hidden. Cancel is highlighted in a green in color.
Within that, there will be a small window. You click inside that. Once you screen the entire screen, there will
Yeah,
be.
yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Now we are viewing your screen. So you please minimize it and open your PPT. Yes. You can make the full screen. No. Yeah. You make this full screen of the PPT. Yeah. Now you can go up and down.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we are seeing. So you may please start.
Okay. Good evening, students. Today I'll be talking on pediatric opportunistic infection in child living with HIV. Let me share my screen. It's audible and visible, no? It's clear?
Yes, ma'am. It is audible and visible.
Okay. So why pediatric opportunistic infection is important in pediatric age group? Because the pediatric age group itself a state of immunocompromised state, because everything is forming. It's in a growing phase. Similarly, you can see the physical growth and development. Similarly, the immune system is also growing. So if there's any hammering on the immune system, there will be severe immunosuppression. And especially in case of HIV, where there is immunosuppression, so there will be a further immunosuppression if the HIV patient is a pediatric patient. So if there's a HIV in pediatrics, there is a rapid progression, and within first year 30% of the pediatric patient will die without any, if you won't give any intervention, and 40% they don't see their second birthday. So it is such a rapid progression. That's why it's very important, to be very crucial to search the opportunistic infection and start the treatment along with the antiretroviral drugs. So my objectives of this session will be understanding the spectrum of various opportunistic infection children with HIV/AIDS, common cases of pediatric opportunistic infections, to know the simplified approach based on clinical manifestation, appropriate investigations for an early diagnosis, ensure optimum treatment, and to prevent re-exacerbation and recurrence, both if there is necessary, then primary and secondary prophylaxis. I have kept the many pictorial presentations so that it will be easy to cover many diseases. I won't go in details. I'll give us a pictorial presentations and then some clinical features and diagnostic point of view. So we know the typical course of HIV infection as when we... My cursor is visible? Okay, so there's a primary infection. We see there's acute viremia, then there's a viremia, a sudden drop in viremia, an increase in the CD4 count, and then there's a set point. Then again there is an increased viremia, and gradually CD4 count will go down, and at that time there will be many opportunistic infections. But in pediatric age group, even though there is a CD4 is quite high, viremia is low, there may be different opportunistic infections, which are very common because they are more common even in a immunocompetent children. So that will be there in a immunocompromised children also. So what is the spectrum of opportunistic infection? First, we'll discuss on the epidemiology, pathogens. So whenever you suspect any opportunistic infection, you should know that what is the epidemiology, then what is the pathogen. Then because of this, there may be a different presentations and they are more prone to develop opportunistic infection because of the immunological status or immunization, because immunization can prevent some opportunistic infection. Suppose a baby has received the pentavalent, which is having H influenza type B vaccine. So the baby presented with the pneumonia or meningitis, you won't think the organism as a H influenza type B if the baby has already received 3 vaccine dose of primary and then booster. Previous coexisting opportunistic infection, that is also important, because especially in the tuberculosis and all, if there's a primary infection and all, that may give the progression of the disease. Yet the adherence and failure, we know there's a good adherence, then the immunity will be high, and then the chances of opportunistic infection will be low. But if there's a poor adherence and there's a drug failure, then the immunity will be compromised, and that will incite many opportunistic infections. Of course, age and nutritional status is also a very important role, because the infancy, newborns are very much compromised. They are more prone to develop any infection that lead to septicemia very fast. We know in adult, septicemia is not that common until under the severe immunodeficiency. In children, even if there's a virulent organism, viral load is quite high, and there's immunocompromised, CD4 is low, then only there will be septicemia. But in case of infancy or in case of newborn, even if this is CD4 is normal, there's no immunocompromisation due to HIV, it still can cause the septicemia, because the newborns and infants are immunocompromised by the reason of physiology. So there is a physiological compromisation of the immune system in newborn and infant. So age is also important. Next is the nutritional status. We do say that severe nutritional deficiency can cause nutritionally acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Like HIV can cause the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Similarly, the nutritional deficiency, severe malnutrition, can also cause nutritionally acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, that is called NAIDS. So if there's a child having a severe malnutrition and the HIV, that will precipitate and make the opportunistic infection too severe. So what are the opportunistic infection, especially in the respiratory tract and all? But there may be a vector. You can classify either according to the anatomical site, respiratory tract infection, gut infection, musculoskeletal infection, neuro infection, cardiovascular infection, or you can classify according to the organism. So bacterial infection, there are different bacteria, Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Pneumococci, H influenza type B, mycobacterial infection. So if babies have received the pneumococcal vaccine, H influenza vaccine, then this thing should be thought of in the end. Fungal infection, again, candidiasis, PCP, pneumocystis jirovecii pneumoniae, or kidney, cryptococcosis, penicilliosis. In viral infection, again, CMV/HSV is quite common. If there is a varicella, that can cause severe form, hemorrhagic form, encephalitis, and all those complications, and can lead to the death also. Herpes zoster, this is also extensive and multidermatomal. Similarly, the protozoal infection also, which is not common in immunocompetent children, but is very common in immunocompromised, like toxoplasmosis, cryptosporidiosis, and isosporidiosis. So as I already said, you can do the anatomical classifications, and that is also very helpful for the diagnosis. Pulmonary OI, GI, central nervous system, and kidneys OI. So let's start with the case. A 10-year-old male child, progressively difficult in swallowing for past 2 months. He's not gaining weight. Last year, he was diagnosed to have pulmonary TB and had a treatment for 6 months. Since then, he has been co-trimazole prophylaxis and vitamins. So, see, it is a difficulty in swallowing for the past 2 months. So, which system? It is a gastrointestinal system, because swallowing difficulty means there is a odynophagia or dysphagia. Rather, they said the dysphagia. Difficulty in swallowing is called dysphagia. And if there is a painful swallowing, then we could have told it is a odynophagia. So it is a gastrointestinal symptom. Now we have to think what are the organisms which are common and common causes of difficulty in swallowing. Now I see the child. Child is a 10 years old child, and is see the picture, nearly severe malnutrition, no subcutaneous fat, no muscle mass, only the whole body is covered with only skin, as if the skeleton is covered with the skin. So there is severe failure to thrive. This is also in a stage 4. Now, if you see the examination of mouth, as the baby is complained of dysphagia, this is not the same patient's photograph, because I don't have that photograph, lost it. So this, you see, there's a oral candidiasis, and there's a posterior pharyngeal wall is also involved. So esophageal candidiasis. What are the causes of common odontophagia? But you have to differentiate between dysphagia and odontophagia. So you have to take the history in detail, and you ask them, give them cues and leading questions. Then only you will be able to derive whether it is a dysphagia or odontophagia. Now, it may be viral infections. It may be a viral infection, fungal infections, maybe due to other HIV itself, or maybe due to gastroesophageal reflux, which can cause symptoms and signs. Then it is called gastroesophageal reflux disease. Then it may be tuberculosis, fungal bacterial infection, other fungal, viral, or some days maybe gastritis due to the drug-induced gastritis may be there. So esophageal infection, and the commonest one we know is the oral and esophageal candidiasis. Esophageal infection among child is quite common, is a 64%, especially beyond newborn period, beyond 6 weeks. Below 6 weeks in newborn, if the esophageal candidiasis are there, it's quite common even in a non-immunocompromised patient. So when an immunocompetent child or HIV negative child also can have a oral candidiasis below 6 weeks. So newborn period. Beyond 6 weeks, you can, if you can get it, it is 20% cases they develop this infection, and 64% in asymptomatic individuals. Symptoms are substernal pain, odontophagia, oral thirst, it can be seen, and presence of oral thirst and odontophagia gives the diagnosis of esophageal candidiasis, but because it is very difficult to diagnose. Oral fluconazole is the treatment of choice. If cannot swallow, you can give injectable fluconazole, the 6 mg per kg body weight. You have to give for 3 weeks. And other causes, CMV, retinitis, colitis, CMV, other viral infection like cytomegalovirus, herpes virus, idiopathic ulcer, TB, all those can cause the oral ulcer and can have a painful deglutition. So you have to rule out these other causes also. Now the next case, a 4-year-old child presented a history of diarrhea for 2 months, and that had worsened in the last 2 weeks. First, the diarrhea, that means again it is a GI system. And 2 months, I know, if it is more than 2 weeks, then it is a chronic diarrhea. So it is a chronic diarrhea. In adult, if the diarrhea passes for more than 1 month, then it is a chronic. But in pediatrics, it passes more than 2 weeks, then it is called chronic diarrhea. The last 2 weeks. So it is more than 2 months, 2 months duration. So it is a chronic diarrhea, and it is increased in the last 2 weeks. The initial episode of diarrhea is 1 to 2 per month, each lasting for 4 to 5 days and 4 to 5 stools per day. So it is quite infrequent, but in the past 2 weeks, this worsened to lose watery stool in the most days of the week and about 4 to 5 times a day. So what happened? So take the history. She gave no history of fever or vomiting. So it is not an acute diarrhea that you will have, or some other causes which can cause fever. But you mind it, because in pediatrics, even the amoebic dysentery, amoebic diarrhea can have a fever. In adult person, you might not have a fever. Lost 5 kg weight in the last 3 months, and his mother died of TB 3 years ago. So there is that was a history of contact is positive. We know the 4 symptoms. Out of 4 symptoms, there is a loss of 5 kg in weight, and there's a history of tuberculosis. Though the history of tuberculosis is above 3 years ago, by definition of history of contact, it should be within 2 years. Now examination, you see the baby is emaciated, means baby was 4 years. So weight should have been 16 kg. But you see there's a 10.5 kg, pulse, there's tachycardia, BP is normal, respiratory normal, temperature just low-grade fever, dehydrated. Oral candida present, abdomen scaphoid, no other abnormalities, and the system no abnormalities seen. So what do you think here? So this is a case of chronic diarrhea with some dehydration. We classify into no dehydration, some dehydration, and severe dehydration according to the IMNC guideline. Here the baby is having only some dehydration with oral candidiasis. So already baby is in a what was the duration of diarrhea? It is 2 months. It is chronic. What were other presenting symptoms? Other presenting symptoms were dehydration and the watery diet in the last 2 weeks and loss of weight. Coming to the stage of the disease, what is the stage of the disease? You can write in a chat box also what are the possible causes of diarrhea and discuss the immediate long-term management. So when patient comes with the diarrhea, these are the questions should come in our mind and we should answer these questions. So most frequent GI manifestation in AIDS is the chronic diarrhea. It's 90% of patients developing countries. Unique features, diarrhea may be due to multiple pathogens. What happens in the non-common immunocompromised child, there may be only one organism responsible for diarrhea. But here, in child living with HIV, there will be multiple organisms causing the diarrhea simultaneously. Pathogens may be more invasive, pathogens may be more resistant to treat, partial response to therapy, and high recurrence rate. So these are the protozoas and bacteria, helminths, and virus can cause diarrhea. This is a study from CMC below. If you see you see the maximum is the Isospora and 28.6 is the Cryptosporidium and rest of the other causes of diarrhea. But this is a bit older children, and in this particular patient there is a GI disease also to be considered because very common in our different part of the country. So how will you give the treatment? Supportive therapy, the fluid and electrolytes as there is a dehydration. So you have to give the ORS and home available fluids. Should not stop the diet. Always give the diet. Feeding should be continued. ORS to be given and home available fluids to be given. Specific therapy according to the organism and nutritional management. If there is a loss of weight, as in this particular patient, baby is only 10.4 kg or loss of weight more than 5%. So you have to give the nutritional management to gain the weight and stage by evaluation and treatment. So these are the treatment. Cryptosporidium, you give the nitazoxanide. Isospora, you give the cotrimoxazole. Or microsporidia, you can give albendazole. This is a common drug we use. Giardia also, you can give the metronidazole. Amoebiasis is also metronidazole. In case of bacteria, if it's a bacterial dysentery, then you have to give cephalosporin or quinolones according to age. And in symptomatic therapy should be given. And of course, some like a Cryptosporidia and other drug, you have to start ART, otherwise it will be not cured. So what are the problem we face? The failure to detect the pathogens, because many times we don't get any pathogen in the stool, or we don't do the stool examinations. Relationship between the enteric pathogens and chronic diarrhea is sometimes very uncertain. Pathogen may not have effective and convenient treatment. Quality of life and functional status have received little attention. Laboratory facilities and expertise are needed because it is not available all the centers. And of course, sometimes if you have to buy the drugs and do the investigation from outside the facility, then it may be costly. Now, the third case, 8 months old HIV positive presented with cough and mild fever for 10 days. So this is the disease of which system? This is the disease of respiratory system. So 8 months old, HIV positive, cough and mild fever for 10 days. So it is a respiratory system, and as it is a 10 days duration, it's a 7 days is a acute, it's a subacute. Since the day before admission, the child had a difficulty in breathing and been unable to eat and drink and sleep. So what happened? 10 days for the last 10 days, he's in cough and fever, but for the last 1 day, baby developed respiratory distress. What could be? So it could be pneumonia. See the X-ray. It could be pneumonia, or it could be streptococcal pneumonia. It could be H. influenza. It could be pneumocystis carrying pneumonia. Anything could be done. Would be possible in this particular patient at the 10 months. But at that particular time, you have to see the HIV status. Whether the baby is an immunocompromised, the CD4 is quite low in the percentage, then the first thing to suspect is the PCP, because streptococcal pneumonia, H. influenzae, other organism, Staphylococcus, all can happen, but it is even a normal CD4 is quite high, even though it can be due to the Streptococcus or Staphylococcus pneumonia. So when you suspect the PCP, if the usually is more common in infants less than 12 months, and they will have a tachycardia, tachypnea, and hypoxia. So when you will say the tachypnea, if baby is 2 months to 12 months, then it is 1 to 2 months. It less than 2 months to 2 months to 12 months, and above 12 months means 1 to 5 years. So if it is 2 months to 12 months, then 50 or more. Less than 2 months is a 60 or more, and then 1 to 5 years it is 40 or more, and above 5 years it is 30 or more. then it is called tachypnea. So you have to count the respiratory rate full 1 minute time, and when baby is calm and quiet. When as soon as we see the baby will start crying by seeing the doctor's unknown face, unknown place. So at that moment you don't count the respiratory rate because it will be not high in crying state. So when baby is cool and calm sitting on the mother's lap, just count the respiratory rate and for full 1 minute and see whether tachypnea is there or not. Is dyspneic? You have to see the dyspnea, and there may be subcostal suction, intercostal suction, then supraclavicular suction. There may be Allen-Izai movement, and sometimes there may be a bobbing movement of the head. If there's a bobbing movement of the head, that signifies the severe hypoxia. Then whether the baby is having cyanosis or not, and if you have a pulse oximeter, you can see the SpO2. SpO2 is what is there in the room air. Cyanosis is partial pressure of oxygen by if it's there, then you will think of it as cyanosis and hypoxia. Then on auscultation, few craves we might get related to the degree of cyanosis. So cyanosis is quite high, but it will get the few craves. But in case of bronchopneumonia, pneumonia, or streptococcus pneumonia, it will be there will be a high. When in cyanosis, if there's a high cyanosis, depending cyanosis, then much more signs and symptoms you will get. But in case of PCP, you will see the cyanosis are there, but only the few craves are there. So you must suspect in that particular patient it could be PCP. In this particular child, there's a history of failure to thrive at 3.5 months when he came for the immunization clinic, and there they have seen that there is a cervical and axillary lymph node with organohepatosplenomegaly. At 7 months of time, child developed pneumonia and otitis media and responded adequately to antibiotics. So baby was in stage 3 because pneumonia is there, otitis media those stage 2. The family history, both parents are living and apparently well. Birth history was 2.6 kg. It's very important to know the birth history because what is the weight of the baby? It's not there. It is a birth weight of 2.6 kg because preterm, if baby was on preterm, then the birth weight might be body weight at presentation might be less. So don't think it will be a malnourished because it's a preterm baby will be lagging behind and they'll gain their weight gradually. So always see the birth weight and then calculate the exact weight. And baby is exclusively breastfed. So what is child's CD4 percentage? You must look for the CD4 percentage. What medication are the child currently taking? You have to ask whether baby was on cotrimoxazole prophylaxis or not. Even cotrimoxazole prophylaxis, then PCP is less likely. So regular long-term prophylaxis makes some diagnosis less likely, like PCP. If the child is on ART and adherent, so if the patient is taking ART and good adherence there, then you won't think of severe immunosuppression. Then it could be due to other organisms. At the first instance, you can think of Staphylococcus or Streptococcus. While adherent to ART, immunity will improve and iris may develop present in febrile illness, tuberculosis, and CMV. That also will keep in mind. So cough and fever, what are the causes? I said it could be bacterial pneumonia, it could be PCP, it could be TB. This is very important. Tuberculosis can present acutely, subacutely, and chronically. So tuberculosis will keep in each and every cases of differential diagnosis. Very important because it can mimic any disease in the child. Viral, there may be cytomegalovirus and childhood virus. You don't forget about the other common virus as like now we are getting very common. Previously we are getting the coronavirus, COVID-19 virus. Now we are getting metapneumovirus, rhinovirus, respiratory syncytial virus, even adenovirus also we are getting the pneumonia due to adenovirus. So other common viruses is common in childhood. You should keep in mind while doing the DD. And of course the seasonal changes, the epidemiological trend in that particular area also keep in mind. And there may be infiltrative like lymphocytic interstitial pneumonitis. Sometimes pulmonary hypertension and all may present with respiratory distress and all. Sequelae bronchiectasis, especially in the older children, present with the cough, respiratory distress, slow onset, and there's multiple changes in the X-ray. You can think of the bronchiectasis. Rarely fungal, non-respiratory interstitial pneumonia and other malignancy can present with the respiratory pulmonary symptoms. On examination, you see the baby is tachypneic, the respiratory is 60 and regular, so it is high because baby is 8 months, below 12 months. So in below 12 months, 50 or more is the tachypnea. So baby is tachypneic, tachycardic, having febrile temperature and FTT. You see the baby's weight was 4.3 kg and birth weight was 2.6 kg. So we know at third week, fifth week it is double, at 9 months it's a triple. If you don't remember the formula, then easy formula is double and triple. So 2.6 kg, baby should have been 5.2 kg at 5 months, but the baby now is 8 months having weight 4.3 kg. So there's a less than 50 percentile when severe malnutrition. SAM is there, so baby is in stage 4. Height you see there's a shortest stature also. At birth it's a 50 centimeter, at 12 months it is a 75 centimeter, but still baby is a 57 centimeter. And you must examine the ears and throat. Don't forget to examine the ears, because otitis media is very common with the pneumonia. There's this touch-in tube connected between the middle ear and the pharynx. So always look for the middle ear. It's very important, others will miss some sign. And in this particular patient, the ears and throats normal. Oxygen saturation was 88% on the room ear. So baby is hypoxic. Let's see the X-ray. There's the bilateral infiltration in the basilar lower lobes in both sides. Total count 8,000. So if it is in a bacterial pneumonia or streptococcal or staphylococcal pneumonia, WBC could have been very high. There may be leukocytosis. Excuse me. Differential count is here again the polymer is normal, more or less normal. Sputum Grandstand, no organism detected. Blood culture as negative. Checks is suggestive of PCP. So 8 months, fever, cough, respiratory distress, low oxygen saturation, normal TLC. So what are the diseases? Bacterial pneumonia? No, because in bacterial pneumonia having fever and cough, it should have been leukocytosis. Viral pneumonia could be possibility, but in viral pneumonia, lymphocyte will be more than the neutrophil. So whether it is PCP, whether it is tuberculosis, whether it is LIP. LIP again is unlikely below 1 year, so 8 months. Tuberculosis again you have to look for this, and the features, the investigation is not looking like a tuberculosis, so it is more likely PCP. And this is the most common opportunistic infection, high in infancy. There's a high mortality rate. Incidence highs in the first year and maximum peaks in the 3 to 6 months. And the clinical symptoms of tetrad of symptoms are fever, tachypnea, dyspnea, and cough. This is very important. And if you examine, there will be few grapes. And sometimes in older age, it may be insidious onset, may not be acute as in the infancy. Treatment is you have to treat with in any case of pneumonia, you have to give the oxygen and antibiotic. Here again, you give the cotrimoxazole as an antibiotic, 20 mg per kg per day in 4 divided doses for 3 weeks. And if even after giving this and even after giving the oxygen administration, there is no improvement in hypoxia, you must give the steroid as a prednisolone 1 to 2 mg per kg per day for 2 to 3 weeks. So this is the finding. I will differentiate between pneumonia and PCP. CD4 count PCP common in less than 200 or less than 15% in a pediatrics group. CD4 in any range can have a pneumonia. Symptoms, non-productive cough. Here you can have a purulent cough also. Chest pain might be there. Symptoms over 2 to 4 weeks. It is a quite acute pneumonia. Signs occasionally dry repetitions, and their focal signs of consolidation and what collapse might be there. WC count is varies, but here in pneumonia it will be quite high, and there will be neutrophilic leukocytosis. So the another case, 6 years male female child presented fever and cough for 7 days, chest pain for 1 day. History of contact absent, weight 17 kg. So in 6 years, it should have been a 20 kg, 70 kg, a bit low. 20 kg. So if it 20%, so it is more, just normal, a bit low. It's not that weight loss. 17 is quite good for the 6 years. Temperature raised, so maybe it's febrile. Respiration is 32 per minute. As we know, above 5 is more than 30. It's tachypnea. So mild tachypnea is there, and the mild temperature is raised. Based on absent in inframammary interscapula region on the right side of the chest, so there is some signs of consolidation. On other examination, normal. So what is the clinical diagnosis? Clinically, by examination, till now we can say it is a consolidation because the breast cells are absent and it's not given out though the percussion note. If is dull, then it should have been effusion also. But we see the X-ray. Let's see. So there is an X-ray on the consolidation with effusion because angle post cardiophrenic and this is the cardiophrenic angle. This is the postophrenic angle. There's a it's obliterated, so there's an effusion. You see in the left lower lobe. So most children there's no specific sign and symptoms TB also radiography abnormalities may be confusing. Identification of AFB is less reliable. Also, children are rarely able to produce sputum. So, what is the other presentation of tuberculosis? If see the cervical lymphadenopathy, you see it may be so big and fluctuating, so that may be and there may be a sinus formation. You see, a severe presentation might be severe malnutrition, bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy. You see in X-ray there is a hilar lymphadenopathy with in bilateral infiltration, cervical lymphadenopathy with sinus formation. Sometimes you might get with the mediastinal lymph node. The last one in CT you have to see that. This is another patient. This is another patient of tuberculosis. See, in our center, the patient come with a complaint of just bony deformity. They don't even bother is there any problem or not. So on history, it is in the fever. Baby is having fever for 3 months. There's a gradually there's a deformity in the bone that is called in medical term gibbous. And on inquiry, we got the information that mother had a TB few months back, and she took the TB for 2 to 3 months, then stopped her herself without any medical advice. So that was the case of bone TB. Now there's another case. You see, there's a mediastinal widening, bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy with the bronchopneumonia type of tuberculosis. So this is the lateral view. Again, you see there's a hilar lymphadenopathy. So it's very important to correctly interpret the radiological X-ray. It's a fibrocaseous type of tuberculosis. This is the miliary mottling, bilaterally miliates like involvement both the lungs. So how to diagnose? You have the symptoms of fever, chest pain, and the presence of absence breath sound. And then I thought of the pleural effusion. X-ray shows the pleural effusion. So how to diagnose? Because pleural fluid CVNet is outcome is very low, very poor sensitivity. So first, any respiratory symptom must go for the X-ray chest, and proper penetration, proper positioning, centralization, and proper interpretation. Very important. Then CVNet. CVNet, you can do it from the gastric lavage according to the age group. Is older enough, they can produce the sputum, then you can go for the sputum. If they can't produce the sputum, then you go for the induced sputum. And it's very important to know how do they induce the sputum. First, you give the nebulization with the bronchodilator, then you do nebulization with 3% normal saline, and that will irritate the respiratory tract, and baby will start coughing. At that moment, you can collect the sputum, or even after that, there is no coughing or no secretion, then you can do the nasopharyngeal secretion swab collection, or you can do what they do after coughing. They don't expectorate out. The children used to swallow the sputum. So after that, you can do the gastric lavage, or as such you can do gastric lavage, and it is a better yield will be if you take the lavage at early in the morning after night sleep. So baby will sleep at night, and early in the morning before getting up on the bed, you collect the sample. What will happen if the baby will get up from the bed and walk? There will be increased peristalsis, and whatever the collection and the whole night was there due to swallowing of the pulmonary secretions, that will go down, and you won't get by the gastric lavage. So it's very important. It should be done in the early in the morning, or if it's not possible, there's no facility for hospitalization, it's outpatient, then ask the child to come with the 4 to 6 hours of fasting. But this is very difficult for younger child. You can do it for older child. Or other methods, if facilities there, you can go for the bronchoalveolar lavage, or tissue diagnosis, like if there's a, along with the chest effusion, you can have a lymph node enlargement, then you can have a effusion of the lymph node or biopsy of the lymph node. So depending on the what site, other extra pulmonary site is there, you can collect the sample from that site for the CVNet, so that the yield will be high. Then, of course, when you give the ATD in case of children with HIV, and first you start the ATD, and then the start the ART. So now you know the 4 drug regime. You will start, and after 2 intensive phase, you will start with the continuation phase with a 3 drug regime, and you can give the ART. So as soon as you give the ART, there will be 2 type of reaction. Might be though the reactions are quite less nowadays. We don't get so much iris, very rare. Previously, it's very common. So what are the iris? What is the iris? Iris is the immune reconstitutional inflammatory syndrome. You might get 2 types of iris, either paradoxical iris or unmasking iris. So what do you mean by paradoxical iris? That means when you are going to treat the patient, what do you expect? You expect that child will be improved. The signs and symptoms of the child will be lessened. But after giving the ART, you might see it can occur in the 6 weeks, within 6 months. So after starting the ART, you will see there is a flaring up of the lesion. Might be there's a, you see, there is no hilar, so much lymphadenopathy, but after starting ART, there is a bilateral hilar lymph node. So that is a paradoxical reason, because you don't expect it. You are expecting the cure, but there's a presentation of lymph node. So that is called paradoxical. Or sometimes unmasking. Unmasking means the symptoms are there, and that is more prominent. Now it is more prominent. Or that it was not there, like in especially meningitis, you can see that especially more on the tuberculoma. In the CNS tuberculum, there's tuberculoma, you are going to treat, that will be meningitis. So the next case, I'm not going in detail about the antitubercular drugs and the treatment of ART, because I have to just see the few cases of operational patient. Now next case, 11-year-old child presented with a fever for 1 month off and on, generalized weakness for 1 month, respiratory distress for 15 days, no lymphadenopathy, organomegaly, weight is 21 kg. 11 years means at least the weight should have been more than 30 kg, but you see a 10 kg list, weight is 21 kg. On room air, the saturation is quite good. It's not good, but it's is not so severe, because we expect in room air SpO2 should be more than 95%. It is 90%, so mild hypoxia is there. Child admitted and put on IV antibiotics, oxygen therapy with NRBM. This test not improved. So when we develop this test, which is not improved even with the non-rebreathing mask ventilation, and then we put on a high flow nasal cannula. CBC done. It is a hemoglobin is low, CRP is quite high. You see total count at 26,000 and CD4 count as a 56, quite low CD4 count. No improvement even after 48 hours. So antibiotic upgraded, nebulization was started, empirical antifungal is started. You see, this is the patient. There's a bilateral consolidation of flappy shadow. And after test, this is a CT scan after 4 days of admission. You see, whole lung is involved. This is another picture. So what we did, we started with the antibiotic, and it's upgraded. Antifungal is already started, nebulization started, and by the time the report came, is the COVID positive. So it is a COVID pneumonia, and as soon as we found it's a COVID pneumonia, started because there's no improvement after giving oxygenation with the different methods, and it already crossed 5 days. That means baby is going towards the complicated state. We immediately started the IV steroid. You see, after 48 hours of IV steroid, they started all clearance of excuse me, all clearance of the fluffy shadows of the X-ray, and the baby became normotensive. There's no hypoxia. Baby sat on the second day and started having food orally. It's so dramatic improvement after giving the steroid. So always think of the geographical distribution and local scenario, because this is the recent case in my hospital, my department, and we are dealing with the COVID patient. So we must suspect the COVID patient pneumonia. Any patient, whether HIV, whether non-HIV, don't forget HIV, that does not mean the COVID won't be there. So we suspect the COVID, and we send the RT-PCR, it is turned to be positive. And the timely intervention with the proper and energetic treatment with the steroid, there's a dramatic improvement, and we discharge within 10 days. So then in the case, there's lymphocytic interstitial pneumonia. How does they present? There's a poor response to anti-TB chemotherapy. It's very common. They mimic like a tuberculosis, bronchiectasis, and sometimes there's a miliary TB. So if you generally they come, there's no response to anti-tubercular drugs and all. So it's more than 1 year. Is only common in older children, not in infancy. Nutrition not severely malnourished. Associated fevers maybe there may be generalized lymphadenopathy, organomegaly, and parotid enlargement is quite characteristic in case of lymphocytic intestinal pneumonia. We have seen quite a lot case. And digital clubbing. This is very important. Digital clubbing when there is a chronic hypoxia. In acute hypoxia, you won't get any clubbing. But in case of LIP, there is a chronic hypoxia, so there will be digital clubbing. And chest X-ray, you will get the diffuse reticular pattern. And differential diagnosis, of course, it is miliary TB, pulmonary TB, bronchitis, and of course, you will always rule out the drug resistance TB also. So this is a case of LIP. Another picture of LIP. So differential diagnosis already said. Management and immunization, beta agonistic and beta bronchodilators and chest physiotherapy should be done. Is very important. And sometimes you might have to give the antibiotics with both gram positive, gram negative coverage. Sometimes there it may be confused with the bronchiectasis, and you might need the when the persistent hypoxia is there, you might have to give the oral prednisone 1 to 2 milligram per kg weight for 2 to 4 weeks, then taper and for the next 2 weeks and stop. Then some cases of viral infections, the herpes simplex virus, which is more common in over 1 month. It may be neonatal herpes if it involves skin, CNS, and eye, mouth. Older can have ulcers in the mouth, gingival stomatitis, and if you see the ulcer, it is a characteristic ulcer, and that this is the herpes simplex ulcer. You see, it is very characteristic ulcer. We don't go for the this James's tenia staphylococcus lesion because clinically it's enough, and we don't go for all those investigations. If you suspect this, you must treat with the cyclovir, the drug of choice. And if there's neonatal encephalitis along with the oral ulcer, you have to give the 20 mg per kg for 23 weeks. But in other ways, when the baby is not neonate, no other than neonate, you will give the 10 milligram per kg for 14 days. Now, varicella can cause in children, in all children, even the immunocompromised children, it will be extensive. It may be exanthematous, that may be a hemorrhagic manifestations, and there may be high chances of complications like pneumonia, otitis, and encephalitis. Again, we don't go clinically the investigation for zinc smear for scrapping. Clinical investigation, the morphological features are quite suggestive of varicella. And if you clinically suspect it's a varicella, always go for the treatment with the prompt treatment with a cyclovir 20 mg per kg for 4 times and for 7 days. But if it's severe encephalitis, then you have to give the IV drug for 14 days. This is a lesion. This is an extensive varicella you see in case of HIV. Now the next, the herpes zoster. Again, in herpes zoster, we know it is an unidermatomal, follows the dermatomes and cures. It is painful. But in case of HIV, it is a multidermatomal and it will be extensive. It can involve other sites along with the skin like retinitis, pneumonitis, encephalitis, and can have a prolonged course. So if you see this, so this is a multidermatomal extensive lesion of herpes zoster. So mild disease, again, you can acyclovir for 7 days, but a severe form, you have to give IV 10 mg for 14 days. Scabies, again, you should not forget with the scabies. This is quite common, even in non-immunocompromised child. So always look for the this maculopapular rashes. It is pruritic. Pruritic rashes, sometimes it is, we had, I think I have given the case, I'll show the picture. A patient presented with the pruritus for a long time here and there, and all the famous dermatologist has given many antihistaminics and many treatment, but there's no improvement. Then they came to us, and we did that. At that time, baby was not diagnosed with HIV. Baby presented with the papillary pruritic eruptions, and everyone thought of the scabies, and it was a HIV with a stage 2. So other way around, HIV stage 2 should not forget if the patient comes with a papillary eruption, the itching, and in case of also HIV, if there's a papillary eruptions up there, you don't think it is a stage 2. It could be a scabies also. Now, drug induced. And the rash comes, so the baby comes with the rash. Of course, we are working in the ERT center, you might be seeing a lot of cases of drug rashes of different staging in stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this must be one of the differential diagnoses where we get the exanthematous fever. Now, oral ulcer, you see, I've already shown the oral ulcer cases. And this is the case. The baby presented the pruritic eruptions and going here and there, and from one dermatologist to another dermatologist, and then land up to our center, and both parents and mother were positive of HIV and having the stage 2 disease. Now, the molluscum contagiosum. Molluscum contagiosum, again, in case of HIV, there will be a extensive, large molluscum contagiosum. You have seen if in your undergraduate days, very common, 5 to 7 lesions, upper part of the chest, 1 or 2 in the face. There's umbilicated, and it is don't need any treatment. But in case of HIV, it will be large, giant size, and there will be extensive. Then another case in the skin tumor. You see, this is another patient. Just now we came to my OPD with this lesion. We thought it may be some psoriasis and all, then it was biopsy and done, and it was diagnosed as skin tuberculosis. So you have to treat that. So what is the presentation of my session is the suspect PCP and child living with HIV with cough, tachypnea, dyspnea, steroid should be used in severe and acute PCP. So if you're suspecting PCP not improving the oxygen therapy and antibic, always go for the steroids. Diet observation therapy, daily therapy of recommended strategy for treatment of TB in all pediatric patients and should be registered under NTP. Cryptococcal meningitis occur less frequently in the children. If you have gone through the OI in adult, cryptococcal meningitis one of the common presentation, but we don't see in pediatrics, very rarely in adolescent child. So I didn't discuss about the cryptococcal meningitis. Child living HIV infection should have a fundoscopy done by the ophthalmologist every 6 months to identify CMV return is what we have to forget in our ERT center. So you should send the patient for fundoscopy. Chronic diarrhea is a major problem in child living with HIV. This is my thank you for your patience. And if you have any query, I can answer.
Yes, thank you very much.
Still time is there, so anyone have any queries, they can ask me. Is there a chat box here?
Yeah, there is a chat box, ma'am. You can see.
I can't see where it is.
Yeah, on the below, on the right side, there is a there is a chat box like word box.
Madam, what is AIP?
There is no message at the chat box.
Okay. So anyone can ask any questions.
Madam, what is LIP?
Yeah, somebody was asking.
Can you please explain?
Lymphocytic interstitial pneumonia. You are asking LIP?
Yes, madam.
Hello?
Yes, madam.
What you ask?
Yes,
So it
madam,
is usually happens in the older children. They come with a cough, chest pain, fever, breathlessness are of gradual onset. More common in above 5 years, 6 years, and it can get into the 3 years, but rarely in the infancy. What was your question about the LIP?
Actually, I wanted to know, I do not know about LIP. Yes, I was asking what it is.
Your voice is not clear. Wanted to know what?
Madam, what is the...
Your voice is not clear. What is the? You just write it.
Madam, what is the
diagnostic X-ray? We do the X-ray. There may be a miliary mottling. It can behave like a miliary tuberculosis. Sometimes very confusing with the bronchiectasis also, because there will be clubbing, hypoxia, even and cough, chronic cough. In bronchiectasis also you will have a chronic cough, hypoxia. Even LIP after having a secondary bacterial infection can present the bronchiectasis. You got your answer? You want to listen something more? I don't understand because I can't hear you. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I got the answer.
Okay.
I got the answer.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Is there any more queries?
So it's very important in pediatrics. First, you identify the what anatomical lesion is involved. Is it respiratory? Is it a GIT or neurovascular or neurology? If neurology peripheral or central, in that way you have to classify. Then see what is the duration, whether it's acute and chronic, because etiology will differ from acute and chronic. Then you try to understand what is the, it could be normal, don't forget, it's a pediatric patients. So even normal viral infections were quite common, that will also happen in a HIV positive children also. So always rule out the common causes which are prevalent in that particular season, that particular reason.
Madam, I would like to ask one thing. Like in a adult case, we normally observe that the pattern of certain kind of infection is depending upon the CD4 cell count of a individual. So
Yes.
is it the same way it is reflecting in the pediatric age group also?
Yes, in few conditions, like as I said, the viral infections which are common, like RSV virus, rhinovirus, metapneumovirus, and adenovirus, and now you know the coronavirus also. So these are common in even immunocompetent child. So it is even there's no relation to the CD4. If CD4 less, we have seen in the it does not give any impression in our, because our hospital is a dedicated COVID hospital. We have seen HIV, though there is HIV positive, there is no other prognosis is not different. It was as good as the normal child. So even as the normal CD4 can have this type. Again, the bacterial infection like streptococcal, staphylococcal, H. influenzae, pneumococcal, they can have even with the normal CD4. There's no relation with the CD4. Tuberculosis, we have seen there's no relation with CD4. But when you're thinking of PCP, LIP, and uncommon organisms like fungal infections, then there's some correlation with the CD4 level.
Thank you, madam. Is there any queries or else we can?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to ask regarding the ART for the child. Like we have as a pediatrician, ma'am, can you clear out whether we have to base on the weight of the child, or sometimes they are malnutrition even though they are 6 years, 7 years?
I couldn't get it.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear it.
Yeah. Yes, regarding the weight of the child, if we start ART, because some of them are malnutrition. If their years already 6 years, 7 years, but still their weight are below 5 kgs or 8 kgs, below 10 kgs. So regarding that, for ART, whether we base by weight or can you clear out with that?
Because we give the drug for the drug distribution in the body. So we actually exact dose if you want to give, it is a body surface area. So whenever you want to give any drug, it is better to give in a body surface area calculation. But body surface area calculations are a bit difficult. So at least the second better is the weight per kg body weight, not according to the age. But some drugs have some limitation, like in case of tenofovir, you can't give even though the baby is having 32 kg, but baby's weight age is less than 9 years, then you can't give it. So in that particular moment, you have some drugs that if a specific indication, and this should be the weight and age, then you have to consider both. Otherwise, it is weight.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You got my point?
Yes, ma'am. I clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we have done, and we'll stop the recording, and we'll sincerely thanks